The Heike Story, or Heike Monogatari, looks to be a fantastic return for Naoko Yamada, as Giant Saro is adapting this series that is based off an old novel. It's airing in the fall 2021 anime season, and we've already gotten 2 episodes of it. And this is my impressions of those first 2 episodes, so let's jump right into it. The Heike Story follows a girl named Biwa who is traveling with her blind father when one day a slip of the tongue ends up catching the interest of the Kaburo boys, who are essentially a group of soldiers who go around and pretty much exact punishment to anybody that speaks ill of Heike, the territory that they're in. And in response of her slip of the tongue, the Kaburo boys, in wanting to exact punishment upon her, her father steps forward and takes the punishment for her, which is death. After the death of her father, Biwa travels around until she finds herself in the presence of the son of the ruler, Taira no Shigemori. And when she finds him, she actually has a premonition, a vision of the future that includes the Taira clan being demolished and destroyed. And after hearing this claim, he spares her life from the warriors that come to claim her. But not only that, even after she claims that she wants the warriors to kill her just as they killed her father, he decides to take her and adopt her as his own child. And thus begins Biwa's life in pretty much a noble family, serving as a child under Shigemori, who is a well-known warrior and essentially claimed as being the conscience of Heike itself. As you'll find out shortly after, the leader of Heike, or Taira no Kiyomori, is a very interesting fellow. A guy that seems to, yes, partake in the things of this world, but gets bored really easily. So he tries to find things that humor him, and often cases that leads to some things that might put them at odds with the emperor himself, which kind of lays it in line with the prophecy that Biwa ended up seeing, which is the downfall of the Taira clan. And as we go through these first 2 episodes, we really get an insight into this world itself. Again, Kiyomori and his kind of eccentric attitude that often gets them in trouble. They have this whole period of time where one of Shigemori's sons, purposely but foolishly, passes a regent on the road and ends up, insulting him. Kiyomori's response is to send out a group of soldiers to claim the knot ties of all of these men as a way of getting back at them. And so Shigemori has to go through the process of not only sending his child to reflect on his behavior, but also to punish the men that were actually involved with that. Another emphasis on the first 2 episodes is really in the marital systems and political marital systems that they have, of course, at this time. We get into a little bit of Tokoku, Shigemori's sister, who talks about the fact that she no longer has a sister close to her anymore because she was sent off to be married at the age of 9. And after about 2 years being married, she ended up having a child before her husband was basically deceased, and how she took claim to a lot of land. And Tokoku herself is even set to be wed to Takakura, who I believe is the young emperor. But not only that, but it also gets a little bit into who Biwa is. Biwa essentially has the ability to foresee the future. She's able to prophesize the future. And these come in visions that come from her eyes. You notice that she has heterochromia, and one of her eyes seems to see into the future. Obviously, like before I mentioned, she did see the downfall of the Taira clan. Not only that, but Tokoko's demise as well, as she sees a vision of her being swallowed by a whirlpool. We also did get a side story of the Shirabyoshi, who are these dancers that perform in male clothing. And one such one named Gyo, who ends up befriending Biwa before she's discarded by Kiyomori and decides to become a nun along with her sister and her mother. And the ties that Biwa gets from that is that her mother possibly was one of these dancers, and that it might be a way for her to discover who her mother really is that she's not seen. But as I mentioned before, I think a lot of the overarching storyline is really kind of focusing on not only the marriages that are happening that are essentially presenting a shift in powers, which is often the case in these times. A lot of power is created and bargained with by brides and marital bonds that different groups create. But essentially also Kiyomori, like I said before, in his very mischievous ways that are essentially going to get his clan in trouble. So my thoughts on the series so far. First of all, Naoko Yamada, my gosh, welcome back. Just absolutely fantastic directing. Now, I will have a little bit of a hesitation there just because it does seem like it's moving relatively quick, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's moving quick. A lot of information is really being presented, and a lot of characters are being presented as it's telling these little stories within the overall story of Biwa coming into this family And again, Kiyomori's mistakes that Shigemori seems to be trying to fix. But I think my biggest hesitation I have for really telling most people about this show is that it feels like it assumes you know a lot about these particular historical characters. I believe this is probably a story that's often told in a lot of Japanese schools, and so a lot of names are flying through the screen very, very quickly. And even for me, I had to sit there and constantly pause and go back to really digest all of these names and who they're referring to when they're speaking about different people. There's a lot of names. There's casual names. There's formal names. There is obviously the Taira clan and all of their names. There's obviously Shirakawa and all of his children and everything. It gets very difficult to really follow. So it is going to be one of those things where you really need to pay 100% attention to the show. Otherwise, you're probably going to miss who they're talking about and the significance of each conversation. But that's not to its detriment. It's just it requires a lot more focus than usually you get from most shows. And I think it's one of those cases where I often feel like I'm missing something and I feel like it's going to be to my detriment. And to be honest, I'm not a huge Japanese history major or anything like that, so don't even expect that from me. Visually, I think I'm not a huge fan of Science Saro. I'll be perfectly honest here. I haven't really had a show from Science Saro that I've been a huge fan of. In often cases, I don't really much care for their artistic style. In a lot of cases, I feel like it just doesn't fit certain atmospheres and certain character designs. They are nailing it here. This is literally the perfect example I have of them utilizing their art style. This show it was meant for them. It was meant for Science Saro. It was meant for their style. It was meant for their creativity. It was meant for their artistic style. It looks absolutely beautiful. Every scene, every shot, I absolutely love how this show looks, how it's being presented, the music, the ambience, the sound, everything is perfect, minus one choice of a music track in the first episode. I don't know why it's there, but like at some point, I don't know, like a quarter way through the first episode, they just randomly throw in some modern instrument in there, and it's like, what is this song doing in here? But other than that, the music is beautiful. It's very in the time period, very beautiful, very majestic. I love it to death. Like I said, visually, artistically, everything else is beautiful. All the characters, the seiyus are doing a fantastic job. Of course, Aoyuki is Biwa, and she is pulling off this child so perfectly. Just her voice, her giggle is so perfect. Yeah, I don't know how she pulls it off, but she just pulls off this character so well. Additionally, for Biwa, I love how they portray the prophecies. Whenever she has one of these visions, it's played by a white-haired girl, which is seemingly like Biwa, but with this long white hair, singing basically a song of the prophecy itself. And it's, again, so beautifully done. Aoyuki's voice is just so fantastic, and she pulls off that styling. I think it's Inca. Pulls it off so perfectly. It's so beautiful. I could make an argument there's so many characters they're presenting so far that it's really hard to really digest each character. But I think so far the main characters they've focused on is obviously Biwa, Shigemori, and Tokuko, the sister, which I think is really the three key role characters I think they should be focusing on right now. Obviously, the sister's been sent off to be married. Shigemori seems like he's a very critical role of everything, including his role with Biwa. So getting into the whole aspect that he sees visions as well of his soldiers, the fact that he fears the darkness because of his visions, the fact they call him the Lantern Lord because he has so many lanterns to hide from this darkness. Biwa, her insecurities, obviously the loss of her father, the seeking of her mother, the people around her that she's meeting, that she's obviously falling for, but at the same time seeing these very dark visions of, and the fear that she has of losing them. She definitely fits the role of her age. She definitely is childish at times. It's just, it's working out so well. Gyo's story was great as well. It's just everything is really coming in line for the show. I think it is, I like I said, besides my hesitation because it's very hard to follow at times with all the names, I think it's got something here, and it's telling us really fantastic stories so far. I'm curious how long this series will run for, because I'm getting whispers here and there that this is a story that can go farther than 24 episodes. So I am really curious if they may skip stuff or if they're going to try to wrap it up in 12 or if it's going to keep going. Either way, I'm along for the ride. I've been enjoying it so much so far that it's got me already pumped up for fall, and fall technically hasn't started for most shows. So at any rate, that's my thoughts on the Heike story so far. I just blabbed on way long for 2 episodes, but there you have it. That's my thoughts. Definitely, if this sounds interesting, definitely check it out. Again, it's on Funimation, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what you thought of the series, or if you're going to check it out. Subscribe if you haven't already, share this video if you can, support us on Patreon if you can, and I do welcome you all to join me as I do first impressions for all the shows coming in the fall 2021 anime season, as well as wrapping up my reviews for the summer 2021 anime season, as well as live streams and all that other good stuff. But y'all take care.